Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. In this particular episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about a case that was called Descamps, which was decided about 2 years ago at the U.S. Supreme Court. And there's been lots and lots of cases that have hinged upon the ruling in Descamps for those years. And then just approximately last week, the new Attorney General of the United States essentially put a hold on cases dealing with Descamps, and basically ordered that those cases are not to be cited as precedent because of an issue that essentially the Attorney General wants to look into, wants to receive amicus briefs, which are essentially briefs from interested parties that will send their opinion on the issue which has been presented. And then the Attorney General will decide whether or not the decisions from the Board of Immigration Appeals, which have been issued, will be for will basically be precedent or not be precedent, and how it is that they will be able to make a decision on that. So, in order to understand the issue, let's go back to Descamps, which is the Supreme Court decision, and let's look at the facts and the ruling, and then what the issue is that the Attorney General has seen in essentially putting cases on hold while the particular issue is looked into. Now, first, there's certain terms that you have to be aware of, and just so you know, when you commit a crime and you end up in immigration court or something involving immigration, it is by no means a simple matter to just say, well, this makes you inadmissible, this doesn't make you admissible. There's all kinds of ways of arguing around or through the particular issues. So the first issue, which Descamps got into, was whether or not to use a categorical approach or a modified categorical approach. Now you might be asking, what the heck is the difference and what does this mean? Okay, well, let me explain. Let's say you commit a crime, and we'll use the crime that was in the Descamps case. It was burglary, and it was in California. You first have to look at essentially the generic definition of what burglary is versus the definition in California. Now, the generic definition is essentially the breaking and entering of a particular place in order or with the intent to take something. Okay, that's basically what the generic definition is. The California definition is essentially the same, except there is no element in there that you have to actually break into a particular place. In California, basically, you can commit burglary if you walk into Home Depot during their open hours, during when everything is just fine, and then you can take something and you could be convicted of burglary, whereas in the general definition, you can't. Now, keep that in mind, okay, because I have to give another example in where clearly a modified categorical approach is necessary. Now, when you have the generic definition, which is generally doesn't include something in the state definition, that's when you use the modified categorical approach. So let's say, for example, in the generic definition, it said you have to enter a store. You have to break in and enter a store with the intent to steal. But let's say that a state definition says you have to break in and enter a store or an automobile in which to, with the intent to steal something. Now, in the state definition, it doesn't include only a store. It also includes an automobile, and if you break into an automobile, then there's different things that happen as to what you can take. I mean, you obviously can't walk in, take something off the shelf, and steal it. So because the state definition is broader and includes something that is not in the generic definition, by law they allow a modified categorical approach for certain documents to be looked at and certain information to be pulled to determine which part of the state definition you have violated. So let's say, for example, you look at the documents, you find sure enough the person did not enter an automobile, but they entered a home, and that fits within the generic definition. Then they can be found inadmissible, and they violated the statutes by looking and analyzing what happened under the modified categorical approach. Okay, now in Descamps, what they ruled is that the modified categorical approach cannot be used if the statute is not divisible. Okay, so in this particular case, you have, again, the generic definition of burglary, which is, with the intent to break into some establishment, or breaking into some establishment with the intent to take something. And in California, again, you don't need to have the intent to break in. There's no divisible part of the statute. There's no part of the California statute that's not that can be done separately and not included within what would be the generic definition. It's just part of it is different. Okay, it's not that it's an additional divisible part. And the rule in Descamps was, if the statute's not divisible, you cannot use a modified categorical approach. Meaning, what that really comes down to is they cannot look at outside documents and outside testimony and outside transcripts and plea agreements in order to determine, for example, if this person actually broke into the store. So let's say that the statute is what it is in California, and let's say the person actually broke into a Home Depot after they closed. Okay, for sure they would meet the definition of generic burglary, but the conviction itself doesn't say whether he or she broke into the store. It just says he violated the burglary statute in California. Because of that, they could not look past the record, which is good. I mean, you can't, they're trying to pull every information they can, minus the actual conviction documents, to see what happened, and they're not allowed to do that. Now, so the issue is, if it's not divisible, then you can't use a modified categorical approach. Now, why did the Attorney General put a hold on issuing cases related to Descamps, and why did the Attorney General want amicus briefs on this particular issue? Well, the reason is because the Attorney General wants to make a ruling on when is a statute divisible or not divisible. And the exact wording is that the Attorney General has put out there is, what is the proper approach for determining divisibility within the meaning of Descamps? In particular, does Descamps require that a criminal statute be treated as divisible for purposes of the modified categorical approach only if under applicable law jurors must be unanimous as to the version of the offense committed? So that's the bottom line. Right now, it's up in the Attorney General's office to determine when a statute is considered divisible or not. It's not going into the ruling that you can use a modified categorical approach if it's not divisible. The question is, when is it divisible? So I probably confused the heck out of you watching this particular video, but hopefully you picked up a couple good things, and I'll keep you updated on when the Attorney General makes a decision on this issue. The amicus briefs are to be in shortly. The reply briefs are to be in shortly, all around January of 2016. So hopefully we'll have a decision on this matter February or March, give or take, of 2016. Okay, if you like the video, click like, subscribe, feel free to give my office a call, and more on the coming videos.